on a day-to-day basis, I get the very, what we like to call casual racism now, don't we? So we get people think it's okay to just go on to this weird kind of Hollywood version of an Irish accent, this kind of Darby O'Gill and the Little People kind of speak.
Myself, I would say institutional racism. Because I had a job at an estate agent, I'm not going to mention the name, in here, in Leicester. I was more qualified than the one that got the job. I was longer there. She was younger. She came in 2 months. And the other one that was replaced as a property manager left. So I was meant to step in to take that role. But it got given to her. From what I hear say, it wasn't directed at me. I felt bad. I felt awful about that happening. But what I was told is the clients, she would represent the clients more. The clients will be more warmed up to her in terms of the way she talks and that. My accent was stronger than this. So I felt like that.
Depending on what your point of view is, some people say it's more multicultural now. But for me, I think it's less multicultural. It depends what your definition of multicultural is. If your definition is that we all use the city centre, highly multicultural. But in terms of whether we actually mix with each other, I'm not sure it's that multicultural anymore, because it's been carved up on the lines of religion and race and whatever. So, like I said to you, when I was growing up, you got put wherever you got, or we had a skating rink, Granby Halls. There wouldn't be special nights for different groups. If you wanted to go skating, you went, and you had to just go mix with whoever, where I find now there's profit to be made in segregation. So I can apply for a fund for a specific group to do skating. Yeah, and it's more likely to get that funding than everybody going to do that thing. So, yeah, box ticking, more multicultural. Really, not sure. I think it's probably gone backwards.
I was standing on the street once and having a smoke after I had a drink. Somebody went past me. I can't say what they say. And I'm just as bad. I fight back. Whatever name he called me about the color of my skin and about me being a woman, the language obviously is not very pleasant. I look at him straight to the face and I call him exactly the same, different name, because he's white and he's a male. So use your imagination what I answer back. And then he pushed me into the corner. He just said, "Get back to your own country." I said, "Unfortunately, this is Leicester. That's where I live."
My part, this is my opinion, right, is classic one, which I call, some of them are classic, I call, some of them is dodgy one, I call. Like schools, which is not many, just here and there. And I'm a firm believer of there's a good people and bad people in every society, in every community. And I met here and there. Schools, when my kids went to school, and I met few people who was racist, like could be teacher, could be the people who bring kids to school, but and I dealt with them in a right way, which is I think we became a best friend after that, which I think is all about. They don't know me, I don't know them, and when people don't know, they always have trust issues, and sometimes that's where the clash comes from. So I met a bit racist, which I call classic racist. It's not direct, but classic one.
But there is still quite a large element of racism, but I think it's all cultures as well. I don't think it is just down to your typical white. I think the racism comes from across all cultures, and that is personal, seeing, hearing, and knowing it happens.
I think there's definitely racism in Leicester, but if it exists, I think it's hidden. It's not obvious unless you do get the one or two comments on the street, or you do get the you get those looks or the stares which do feel really obvious.
So as soon as I talk, people think it's perfectly okay to replicate what I've said in my accent. And I often point out to people, if I was any other protected community, if it was from another community that had an accent, you wouldn't do that because you would think it would be racism. So why do you think that that's okay? Because I speak English as a first language, or because I have white skin, or because I come from the island just over there? Do you think that that's acceptable?
I don't feel that my voice as a Zimbabwean person is easily heard. Say if we were to stand in a queue and we were saying the same thing, I think probably I wouldn't be the first to be recognized. That's what I feel, that in some way I am invisible.
My husband has been, stopped a few times, sometimes for no obvious reasons. As we all know, statistics is showing it's not just talking about racism or saying that I've experienced racism, but the wider research is showing, obviously that the people from the black or the black minority community are more stopped and searched, sometimes for no obvious reasons. I personally have experienced racism in the course of my training and at work sometimes. But what happens with institutional racism is that it's so subtle that if you are not aware of what racism is, if you're not aware of, someone actually being racist to you, you can just pass unnoticed. But despite how subtle it was in my own case, especially during training, and at some point when I had a particular manager, it was there, right in your face, and I know that it was there.
For instance, this building, it's called the African Caribbean Centre, but it's part of the library services. So it's under that. There is no cultural, they don't look and say, right, because it's the Caribbean Centre, we're going to be culturally appropriate to your needs. Nah, it just says that over there. You're just part of the library service and you will be treated just like the library service. We're not taking your culture or anything else into consideration. Point being, if you look around this building, there's all these signs, many of them. You do get these signs in council buildings, but usually just one. There's all these signs in here what say, they're implying that violence is more likely to happen here to the staff. So it says, the staff, violence, and it's implicitly racist because the mainstream media imply black guys are more likely to be violent, criminal, or whatever than anybody else. So this being the Caribbean Centre, when you look on every surface and there's warning signs, it implies this place is probably a bit more dangerous. But if you was to then ask the people who work here, have you ever seen a member of staff attacked? They'll say no.
You do. You get your name called by some stranger, but you don't even know, or somebody look down on you or tell you to go back where you come from. We got all this, but you expect that when you go to another country. You expect that wherever you go, it's racist all over the world. It's racist. You can't say no racist in such a place. Everywhere, every corner of the world, you got racist.
Institutional racism, of course, it validates or it encourages people, those individuals, because if it were only individuals, honestly, it wouldn't go far. It wouldn't sustain because the institutions would try to stamp down on it, like what the schools do these days. At my grandson's school, if somebody is being racist to another child, they will actually call the parent of the child who is being racist, the parent of the child who is on the receiving side. And, both sides, they will actually try to work together and help, So it's just about understanding, and you will see that in those places where the institutions try to help and try to stamp it out, it works. But when the institutions do things that encourage racism or do things that people act in a racist way and they get away with it, or people who try to report racism get backlash.
The style of racism has changed, whereas the likelihood of you being called or you Paki in the street is slim. A lot of it's done behind a keyboard now on social media, and it might not be so direct as "all you Paki." It's I think during COVID, when you kind of scrolled on social media on some Leicester groups and pages, they've brought that variant over from India. They live in extended families. They're going out in the factories. They are spreading it. Indians are spreading it. You know, it was the word Indian was used. They were used. And is it borderline racism? Is it racist? It might not be "or you Paki." But yeah, to me, I'm going to be honest, for the first time when I started to read those things, I was like, I didn't think this happened in Leicester.
I've experienced more stereotypical racism, if that makes sense. So like stereotypes that occur with Asians. I think my mum has experienced it quite a bit since she's moved here, but not as much now. I think I remember her telling me when she first moved here. So we lived, not where I live now, but in another part of Bunston. Back then she experienced quite a bit of Asian like stereotypes and racism, simply because she couldn't speak much English. She was new to the country, so she didn't really know what was going on. And I think that's why the public like recognised that and took advantage of that.
Yeah, I have friends who have experienced racism, but I come from a family where I have my direct brothers who are married to white, and so for me, I've not really experienced that, but I've had friends who've experienced that and friends as well. For example, when I used to be a support worker, I was on shift with a colleague, and I had someone racially abused him. I was present, I wasn't told, so it was so bad. He felt so he couldn't really continue working that night, but he couldn't go back home as well. So I just had to encourage him that we just need to do what we have to do.
Growing up in Leicester back in the 60s, it was a very white city because it wasn't just areas then. Even though I was born in Highfields, I don't remember it because my mum left there when I was 2. And we moved to areas where it was very, very white dominated. I didn't understand that a lot of it was racism as a young girl until I got quite a bit older. And racism, a lot of it did come from adults, even teachers. And so yeah, it's quite severe.
You know, that topic of racism, I don't always like to talk about racism because it is just a daily occurrence. You know, just by standing before somebody, I am black. His or her attitude towards me takes a long time to actually open up with me. And I don't blame anybody. Okay? It's the same. So if somebody does not treat you the way you think, and the impression is that he's just being racist, but probably with time, he opens up and you become friends.